so much death happening. A really obvious question. Do people stay dead when they die? What really happens when we die? What's the process like? How does it start? How does it continue? What happens before, during, and after? This is a deep metaphysical question for all of us. There's a lot of people who believe that we observe outside as death is to the dying person just a passage into another state, a metaphysical journey into a higher dimension of existence, which is a nice thought. And some people think that it's going to be really awesome and wonderful, and there's going to be angels, and there's going to be harps, and they're going to see their friends, and they're going to fly around, and there's going to be guys in multicolored loincloths, and they're really like at peace with that, and that's really nice. And then there are various other beliefs about what happens to you that are, you know, maybe a little bit less cheery, but they're still deeply held by some people. But the point is, beliefs are easy. Where's the knowledge? Where are the facts? You know, and I ask that personally. I consider myself to be a scientist, and science has been fascinated with death for a really long time. Anything that you can't know about, scientists are going to want to discover about. So they've been learning and they've been studying, and there have been, you know, epidemiological studies and statistical studies, and there have been autopsies. There's just been a lot of attention on dead people. Scientists, whenever they have gone back and looked at dead people and checked up on them to find out, are they still dead? How are they doing? What's it like? The thing that they observe largely is decomposition, decay, being eaten by worms, and just general continuing. It seems as if people just get even more dead if such a thing. But, you know, science, it's important to keep checking your hypotheses. For instance, just last year, July of last year, this man, the one who's alive, Hugo Chavez, president of Venezuela, conducted an exhumation of the corpse of South America's most famous revolutionary hero, Simón Bolívar, the man that Bolivia is named after, the man who's called the emancipator of that continent, to see how he was doing. Turns out, still dead. Which was, you know, not unexpected by certain individuals, but definitely it was reassuring to anybody who'd been concerned about that. Some other people who you can check on regularly to see if they're still dead. Here's a man named Vladimir Ilyich Lenin, the father of the Russian Revolution. His dead body is on display constantly. Somewhere in Russia there's a tomb where you can go and see that they're keeping it waxed and shined up and embalmed. And this is a fascinating little point to make, because whereas death is feeling really inevitable at this point in the slideshow, decomposition is something that we've learned to escape. Lenin is a great example. Of course, it takes a lot of maintenance, like any long-term project does. Another great example is this man, Walt Disney, who quite famously had his head removed and frozen in a vat of liquid nitrogen for some reason. This was after he died. And by all reports, that head ought to be doing great, although a bit chilly. And this gets into an interesting topic. There are a lot of people who are trying in various ways to evade death. There have been a lot of strategies proposed for how to make it past death, keep out of death's grasp, you know, postpone the inevitable, etc. Cryogenic suspension is one that people have said, like, let's freeze people who are almost dead and wake them up later when we have some better idea of what to do with them than that. It's at least admitting the limitations of current knowledge, which is exciting. Other people think that a diet rich in antioxidants, such as carrots, will be the key to the delay and perhaps eventual escape of death. There are carrots available here if you'd like to try that. Removal and preservation of brains is a popular suggestion. You know, perhaps the brain can be put in a less dead body later. That's not really been successfully tried to my knowledge. There's always rumors. Some people even attempt to live on after death through the immortality of literature. So, an obvious question, how is all of that working for people? When we look back at, you know, people have been trying this long enough that you can do some analysis, you know, statistically over all of these strategies and see how they've been working. The answer is pretty clear. It's not super positive. It appears basically futile to attempt to escape death. You know, everybody's tempted to escape death at this point. Almost all of them are dead. The ones who aren't dead yet, there's really no expectation that they're not going to be dead in 100 years down the line. Sadly, the message that we're getting is that we're all going to die. And I hope that I've made that as clear as I possibly can. But there's some things that you can take from that. There's definitely some positive lessons. One thing is that our time here is limited. We should use it wisely. We should live each day as if it's a precious gift. We shouldn't, maybe, for some people this might address your video game or internet habits. For other people it might be, you know, things you've been putting off or people that you've been meaning to call. So, you know, this helps you get on with that. Another thing that's worth mentioning is that death is really interesting. Thinking about death has been rewarding for me, and I hope that you will all be thinking about death tonight and perhaps for the next several weeks. There's a lot there to think on, and it can be very inspiring. I hope that you also see there's a lighter side to it. Not everything about death is bad. You know, it's a cycle of life. Some must die so that others must live, etc. I hope I've shown you that if you are going to die, there's some entertaining ways to do it. At least you have that much of a, you know, thing to leave behind for people who've never met you. I do think that it's important to point out, though, that there are dangers to thinking too much about death. There's actually a thing called over-necro-conceptualization, which literally means thinking about death too much. And this can lead to such feelings as despair, grief, paralysis, overeating, suicidal thoughts, actual suicide, which can then, of course, lead to death. Kind of a paradox, but so, you know, it's tricky trying to find the right amount of death to think about. Not thinking about it at all is probably a mistake. Thinking about it all the time is probably a mistake. The best thing you can do when you find yourself thinking about death too much, I've learned, and this is like a professional tip that I hope that you'll apply in your own lives, is instead think about unicorns. Unicorns are beautiful mythical beasts that do not die because they're not real, but you know, they have beautiful, long, fluffy manes, and of course they have extremely phallic horns projecting from their foreheads. They're virginal and they're soft and fluffy and warm, and they, you know, they can heal you with their eye lasers, and they're good cures cancer. And they're just, you know, charming animals to have around if you happen to have one around. If you don't know where one is, you can always at least go looking for one. And if you can't find one, you can at least draw pictures of one in your notebook. Just use that, you know, positive unicorn energy to repel the negative thoughts in your life. And, you know, I depend on unicorns a lot to lift my mood, but I will point out that sometimes if you become too dependent on unicorns, you can find that they lose their cheerful effect, and occasionally they can start to have the opposite effect. So if you find that you're trying to use the unicorn method to moderate your thinking about death in the exercises that I've given you this evening, don't despair, because you can always fall back on kittens. Kittens, unlike unicorns, are real, and if you're in a really bad spot, you can go to a pet store, and usually they won't kick you out for the first half an hour or so. If you just say, I want to go hold and pet and stroke the kittens. Also, kittens are available in a variety of dosages, which is handy. You can have more or less kittens, whereas like even one unicorn is kind of a lot. You can also have the great interactions you can have with kittens. You can run and jump and play with them, and you know, they have their downsides too, but generally they're cheerful. If you're good to them, they'll usually be good to you. You know, sometimes you're hanging out with kittens, you've had a lot of kittens, you've had some unicorns, you're still thinking about death. You're beginning to wonder if there's anything you can do. Don't despair, because even if unicorns aren't working for you and kittens are losing their edge, there's still unikittens. Unikittens never fail. These are actually unicorns and kittens at the same time. They have all of the best features of kittens And all of the best features of unicorns. So with unikittens on your side, there's no doubt that you'll sleep easy tonight. So just gaze, if you will, upon the face of the beautiful, virginal, lightly shedding, softly purring, fluffy, warm unikitten, and let that be what you think of tonight if thinking about death is too hard for you. Woo! Thank you all for listening. Postpone your own deaths as long as possible.
Yeah.
And
thank you.
We'll leave the floor, and if anybody comes up to grab it in the next 5 seconds, then maybe bars open.